And we are on. So welcome everybody to the third COVID Careers call for 2020. And I am, you've seen me on social media, I'm so excited that I've got my colleague Paula Brandt here today to talk about LinkedIn. But before we get to Paula, we're going to do our usual sort of check-in and calming and breathing exercise. So if you've been with us the last couple of times, the breathing exercises that I did were fairly energetic, and they weren't something that you would necessarily do in public. Either bee breath where you're buzzing, or bellows breath where you're, pulling your arms down sharply and breathing out. The breath today is a really simple one. Won't take us very long. It's really simple, and it can be done anywhere. It's just a simple 10 count exhale. And with each exhale, you count 10 and then 9. And as you are exhaling to each count, you are sort of scanning your body, finding places where you have tension, and just letting it go. So with each sort of exhale from 10 down to 1, we're letting go of a little bit more stress and a little bit more tension in the body. And so for those of you who prefer to close your eyes, again, I'm the only one who's on the screen. So everybody else, you can close your eyes and relax. I will count you down. And with each number, I just want you to exhale, and I want you to loosen up something in your body, let go of tension wherever you're keeping it. So ready? Here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I just want you to take a second and tune into what you're noticing in your body. And it should feel just a little different for most people. I have worked with clients where this didn't actually work for them. So not all breathing techniques work for all people. But this one you can count to yourself. You don't have to count out loud. Just 10 quick breaths where you're progressively relaxing your body. So that is your little relaxation tip for the day. So now I did want to check in on what networking everyone did last week. And I've got the chat box, so if anyone wants to share networking success stories. Lots of people have been doing Zoom video chats and catch-ups with college roommates. All of these count as networking. These are people in your world, and you are reconnecting with them. One person I talked to got a Zoom call together for their college roommates. Somebody else got a call together of all their cousins spread around the globe. So I just want you to think about, that was our first week. We talked about who can you reach out to, who can you connect with, new or old, and that should be something that we do each week as we go through this process. And Paula will tell you how to use LinkedIn to find some new people to connect with and network with. But I'm going to ask each week, so who have you been networking with? Who have you reached out to? Who have you set up an appointment with? And then my next question is, and did you do anything with your LinkedIn profile? Because last week, Paula, what we talked about was privacy settings and how to use your headline and putting a summary section in and adding to skills, all the things that just are the basics of getting a LinkedIn profile up and running. So that was what we talked about last week. And so I hope some of you went in and just did the basics so that your LinkedIn profile at least meets the basic expectation. It doesn't need to be perfect, but when somebody comes to your profile, they know who you are and they have an understanding of what you do. So now it is my great, great pleasure to introduce my dear colleague, Paula Brandt. She and I were talking before the call started. We've known each other, we think, since 2010. And literally one of our very first conversations was about LinkedIn, because Paula was busy telling me that I really should be on LinkedIn. And I was quite resistant at the time.
You were not a believer.
So all of you who think, oh, all these career counselors, no, it took us a little while to adopt as well. So Paula is, as I said, a LinkedIn expert. She has deep experience in the career counseling and workforce development worlds. She served as head of HR as a workforce development advisor for Anne Arundel County, as a consultant helping Walmart set up a training program, and currently as a career advisor for the World Bank. She started her private practice in 2011, and for the past 5 years, she's been full-time in private practice. Her specialties are, of course, LinkedIn and also women's career development. She's in the final stages of publishing a book for women. I had the pleasure to be one of the readers on that book, and I can tell you it is packed with everything you would need to know about your career development. So as soon as she finds the place to get it published, you will find a link on my LinkedIn profile. So we are really fortunate to have Paula here with us today, that she took some time out from work. So at this point, Paula, I am going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for inviting me, first of all, Karen. I always love collaborating with you. And it was good because it got me to, like I hadn't been to the job search section in a while. So it was good that it got me to get on there. And I actually was making some changes on my profile the other day. And I see in the chat box, Bethany, looks like she had updated her LinkedIn profile. So way to go, Bethany. And then a few other people had answered some of your questions about who they networked with. And Emily updated her privacy settings. So that is all good. So people are doing what you're suggesting. So that's good. You're going to move the slides, right? So Karen asked me to just sort of focus in, since it's a relatively short time we have together, to just focus in on a few things. And I decided to focus on identifying new contacts and then how to send a connection properly. And then a little bit about the job search features that you have on LinkedIn. So each slide has the heading, like in this one, identifying new contacts, 3 tips, and then we'll have some screen share or some screenshots to share subsequently to illustrate what I'm talking about. So in terms of identifying new contacts, these are probably the easiest 3 to start with. You can do a lot of things. You can just type any name in the search box. If you know someone already, you can think of former bosses, colleagues, former colleagues, and so on. But these 3 are specific situations where you would look for someone. And the first one is Alumni Connections. So the only caveat to that is that you have to have the school on your profile. And I guess theoretically anyone could write any school because it's not like the school is verifying it, but in general, by putting, in my case, a University of Baltimore on my profile, it allows me to go in as an alumni. And I'll explain that more when we see the screenshots. But for example, Karen, you went to Georgetown? I'm trying to think. What college did you go to?
For my master's program, it was George Washington.
George Washington. So if I went to George Washington's page on LinkedIn, I would not see the alumni button because it's not on my profile. But if Karen goes, since it's on her profile, she will see the alumni. And the same token, if I go to University of Baltimore or University of North Carolina at Greensboro, I will see an alumni button that those of you who didn't go to that school wouldn't see. So bottom line is you can't expect to do this feature if you don't have your college filled in on your profile. And then there are some advanced filters we'll talk about for job search, the job postings page, but also on the connections page. And then LinkedIn is always trying to get you to engage with them. So they're, as you know, constantly, having pop-up boxes or making suggestions or asking you, did you really go to school here? Type thing. And so there is a whole section where they just say, you might know these people. And that's probably the easiest place to start. If you're not sure and you're just getting started and you can't think of anyone off the top of your head, I would just go there because LinkedIn's algorithms are already doing the work for you. For example, I consult at the World Bank, so it will suggest people who work at the World Bank. Any former employer that I work for, it's smart enough to match up the employer name on my profile with the employer name on other people's profiles. So it will suggest people that it has some reason to suggest to you. So it ends up being pretty smart. And the more data you give LinkedIn, usually the smarter the algorithms get and the better it is at presenting like jobs that would interest you or people that you might want to know. With that said, Karen, let's go to the next slide and just show some visuals for the alumni section. So when I go to University of Baltimore, which you can see in the top left corner, you'll see that that alumni tab that shows up underneath home about jobs. And that's what I was referring to. If Karen went to the University of Baltimore page, because every college has a page, just like companies have pages, she won't see that blue alumni word. And then when you get to that, you can see how many alumni there are. You can basically curate it for the year you graduated, or maybe a window, but the default is 1900, and probably we don't need it to be that far back. I did turn 50, but I'm not quite that old. So the other thing is you can search in the where it says search alumni by title, keyword, company. You can add anything there. You could add Raytheon, you could add counselor, you could add teacher, you could add CEO, you could add healthcare. You could add basically any keyword that you want to narrow it down by, and it will. And then what you see below, there's a bunch of screens. This shows you where they live, where they work. But if you click to the right, it keeps moving. There's probably about 8 different screens, and it shows you like their top skills and how they're connected to you and all these other things about these alumni. And so it says 28,000 plus right now, but I'm sure if I put in a word like teacher, it would maybe go to 800 or something like that. And then all the numbers would get lower. But if I click right now, I can see that 134 people who went to University of Baltimore work at T. Rowe Price. And if I clicked on that actual line where it says T. Rowe Price and the 134, then it would show me the 134 people, their names, and in some cases their profile will be revealed to me, in some cases not, if I'm not connected to them in any way. But basically I can see who those 134 people are for the most part, and then it would tell me if I know someone who knows them. So that's kind of a roundabout way to search for people who are fellow alum. And even if you don't have a warm contact, like an in-between, someone who knows someone, you still went to the same school. And I know Karen, I've heard her say this before too, you already have a connection just by going to the same school. As silly as that sounds, you're more likely to help someone if they reach out and say, oh, we went to the same school. And the same is true if you're the job seeker. You should not be, I guess, as intimidated by contacting someone who went to your school, because the truth is they'll probably be more than willing to help you just because you have that common connection. So this can be a great way to mine data to find people who are in your industry or in an industry you want to get into, people who went to school with you, who work at a company where you want to work, and so on. Any questions about this before I move on to the next slide? I'm realizing already I'm probably taking too much time on each slide. Karen, I trust you'll kind of keep an eye on the chat box. So the next slide is the people filters, so the advanced filters. And basically this might sound a little strange, but the way to get to the advanced filters is to search for one thing. Like if you search for one person, then you suddenly see all filters kind of under the main black menu bar. And then if you click on all filters, then depending on the section you're in, like if you're looking for a person and you say all filters, you'll see people filters. If you're looking through the jobs and you click all filters, you see job filters, which we'll see in a minute. But this just shows you the types of things. And of course, if you have an upgraded version, you do have more fields that you can search, but I think there's plenty here with the free version. The most important are probably the name and the title. And to be honest, this isn't exactly what it looks like because I was trying to fit everything on one screen. So the first name and the last name and the title, those actually show up at the bottom. But you can see how many connections, not how many connections, but you can filter down to people you're only a first degree connection to, or people you're only a second degree connection to. And let me just explain that very quickly. I think most people on the call probably know this, but if you don't, if I send an invitation to Karen and she accepts it, then we are first degree connections. But there might be many people whose Karen is a first degree connection to who I'm not. And so if there's someone who she's connected to that I'm not, they would be a second degree connection to me because I am first with Karen, so therefore I'm second to everyone else on her list. So that's what I mean when I say first degree, second degree. So second degree would be a different level. If you narrowed this down to first degree, you know all the people already, or you're at least connected to them on LinkedIn. If you chose second degree, you would probably have to see who you're connected to in common in order to say, oh, Karen, I see you know Joe. Can you connect me to Joe? Type of thing. You can see industry, previous company, and these are just, what it shows you are just suggestions like United States, India, United Kingdom. When you actually type one in, it saves it for the next time. These are just suggestions that automatically came up. And then the last slide for this section is, this is what you see when you go to your network page. You know what, I want to just move the bar because I'm not seeing the top part, and I just want to make sure I'm speaking, trying to move all the people. There we go. Okay, so you can see I have circled my network because on the main menu bar on the top, that is what you would click on to get to this page. And then if you scroll down from, the first thing you'll see is invitations that are waiting for you. But underneath that, you'll see that it has all these suggestions like, again, I'm trying to move this bar out of the way, sorry. I think it just says people who I might have worked with in the past. There we go. Yeah, people I may have worked with closely, thank you. So it's just guessing probably because I worked at a place and we both have the same company in our profile. And then if you look at the very bottom, you'll see people you may know at World Bank Group. And the list just goes on. It just, you know, the next category is people you may know who at another place I've worked. So these are all very curated already because these are all people that it thinks I have some connection to. I may not, but certainly anyone at the World Bank Group, I work there. So these are all people who would have that common connection. So those are 3 ways that you can look for more people to connect with. One was looking through alumni by going to your college page, and then really just, you can narrow it down and filter to your heart's content, basically. I mean, there's a lot of things you can filter on. And then the second was advanced filters. That's just when you're looking for one person, or you could be trying to pull, say you're trying to target CEOs in healthcare because you want to be like director of operations in a healthcare facility. You could put healthcare as your keyword. You could put CEO. Then you could try to run the search again with the word president because different people use different words to indicate running an organization. And then you could get a list of maybe 25 people who are in this geographic area who are CEOs of healthcare companies. And then you would kind of go from there and try to make contact with those people, as assuming they would be the hiring manager for that type of position you're looking for. And then this one screen we're looking at here is just suggestions. When people, sometimes when people first get on, they just think, oh gosh, I don't even know where to start. So this is the easiest place to start because it's already doing a lot of the work for you. So that is the finding people, identifying new contacts. And then of course, once you find them, you should reach out to them. Finding them does nothing for you unless you actually take action. So you want to then send an invitation. And I'm going to show you how to, 2 tricks here. One is how to customize your invitation, which you really should do every time. And yes, I'm going to say that again because people are like, do I really have to do that? Yes, you really should. When you think about it, if you don't write it and someone doesn't know you, so there's different levels. I mean, if I was sending an invitation to Karen, I could probably put, what's up, Karen? See, you're on LinkedIn. Let's connect, Paula. Or I could even put P. I mean, you know, we could keep it very informal. But if it's someone who I've never met and I don't write an invitation, if you don't customize it, they get the generic something like, I'd like to connect, I'd like to add you to my network or something like that. It's very generic. It looks very generic. Everyone knows it's the generic default. And someone could very, you know, understandably think, wow, this person's sending me this invitation. I don't know who they are. What's my incentive? Why? I don't even know why they want to connect with me. Why would I do that? I don't know them. Maybe they're spammer, right? These are all the things they might think of. And you could solve all that by just writing a few words. And it's 300 characters that you're limited to. So you can't write a lot. So you do have to think to write succinctly and figure out how can I very quickly write to this person to explain why I'm writing. And some simple things could be, I read your book, and at the end of the book, you suggested people reach out to you to connect. So I'm doing that. Or it could be, I saw you speak at a conference, or it could be, I see you're in the same industry, but across the country or across the pond or something like that. Just something to show you put in a little bit of effort and explain why you want to get to know them. Otherwise, it's very normal that someone would just ignore your invitation. And if you don't have a picture and you send an invitation that is not customized, then people might actually even report you. I don't think they do that still anymore, but you could basically, used to be able to pick accept, ignore, or report. I haven't seen report anymore, but certainly they're probably going to ignore it. So let's talk about how to personalize it. We'll show that in a screenshot in just a second. And then I also, or you could just leave it there. I'm going to show you desktop and mobile, because a lot of people say, oh, I know how to do that on the desktop, but you can't do it on a cell phone, but you can. So I'll show you how to do that. And then the last trick is that a lot of times people say, okay, someone wrote me and I don't know who they are, but I'm not necessarily against connecting with them, because maybe they're in my industry or there's some reason and they think this could be a good person to know, but they're just not sure. Just know that you can reply to someone's invitation without accepting it. And I do that a lot, and I'll explain that when we get to that slide, that's one of my policies. I think just briefly, I'm going to say before we move to the slides, in general, you want quality over quantity. So it's not about getting the most LinkedIn connections. You could have 10,000 connections, and if you don't really know anyone well enough to ask them for a favor, then it's not really that valuable. So I would say it's not that I'm best friends with every connection I have, but I have vetted them all. There's no one that I never accept invitation. If it's not customized, then I don't think I know the person. I do the reply without accepting and see how they react. And then based on that, I hit accept or I don't. Okay, so let's jump into the slides. And I noticed Lynn said she couldn't agree more. It's definitely, yeah. And Lynn, you're in HR. Well, you used to be in HR, now you're doing different things, but you know, anyone who's in the HR world or been in the HR world is going to know. And Lynn was a recruiter. So if you wrote to a recruiter, if you sent a recruiter an invitation with no explanation, I think Lynn would probably agree with me on this too, that they're not going to accept it just out of the blue. Okay, so this is what a screenshot looks like for you're on the person's, let me just say this, whether it's the desktop or the mobile, you have to be on the person's actual profile. If you click, do me a favor, Karen, just go two slides back. That's forward, but one more back. Yeah, hit this page. So on this page, if you clicked connect on any of these people's, any of the boxes of these people's, you know, mini profile, it would just send the default invitation. So if you see the word connect anywhere but someone's actual profile, and we're not looking at these people's profiles, these are just mini snippets. Unless we go to their profile, if we click here, it's going to just send the generic. So just to warn you about that. Okay, so now we can go back to the other, and while you do that, Lynn said she couldn't agree more. It's best to send the introductory note. Her policy is the same. If she doesn't know them and there's no note, she's very unlikely to accept. And I think that's pretty common for anyone who uses LinkedIn a lot. So here we are on the person's profile page. You're actually again seeing 3 different snapshots. So the top part where it says connect, that's the top of the person's page. And then when you click connect, you see the second screenshot, which says add a note. And then the third one on the bottom is where you can write something, and you can see the number 90 is showing you, I think, how many characters you have left. And once you get to 300, it will start giving you a minus number in red. And this is what you do, and then you send an invitation. So it's really not that complicated, and it's so much more impactful, and people are so much more likely to accept your invitation, and it's really just good etiquette. So the next slide will show you on mobile, and I have an iPhone, so that's what you're seeing screenshots of. I don't have an Android, and it's probably slightly different on an Android, but the basic concept is the same. You go to the person's profile, which is the screenshot that has Alan Steyer, and then you go to the 3 dots, which are circled on the screen. Then when you click on that, it takes you to the screen to the right where it says personalized invite, and then the third shot is with my picture is actually where you type the message. And then at the bottom it says send invitation. Again, not rocket science and really worth the extra 2 minutes or so it's going to take you. And then this is my third trick. To explain what's going on here, let's just say someone sends me an invitation. And as I mentioned before, I say I don't know who they are or I don't recognize them at first. Like at the World Bank, I do a lot of webinars, and someone could have been on my webinar, but maybe the name John showed up on the participant list, and then someone named John Smith tries to connect with me. I'm not going to be able to assume that that's the same John, right? So this is my way for vetting anyone who sends me an invitation who has not customized it. I go to my network, that's why that's circled in blue. And that's the same page, by the way, that I also said to click on when you want to see all the potential people you could connect with that LinkedIn is suggesting. So you click on my network, and at the very top, you see the invitations, and then you see the word manage all. That is the key, because when you don't click manage all, you see Dan Ipes, Tracy Lane, Pale Wellness. But when you click on manage all, it turns into the bottom screen where you see the word message underneath Dan Ipes' name, right under 63 mutual connections. So you can see it's kind of strange, but for some reason, just clicking on that manage all creates that message button. And then if you click on message, you can write back to them. And you haven't accepted their invitation, but you haven't ignored it. And what I have on the top right screen is just my boilerplate template that I have in a Word document because I use it so much. And I won't read it out loud because I think most people are probably looking on the desktop, Karen. Maybe I'll read it out loud for someone who's on the phone because I don't think the phone folks can see as easily. It basically just says, thanks for your invitation. I'm interested in making new connections. However, I like to feel I know a little something about the people that I'm adding to my network. Can you refresh my memory if we've met or share your motivation for connecting? And that gives me a little leeway if maybe I met them at a job fair or again, they were on a webinar where I didn't see everyone's face or name. So, that hopefully saves me a little bit of embarrassment. There was one time where someone sent me an invitation. It was my friend's daughter, but she had gotten married. And so she had a different last name and she had no picture. So I sent her this. And then of course, she was like, I'm Danette's daughter. So I'm like, oh, okay. But that's the reason that you want to send the invitation. If she had just said, hi, it's April, I got married, want to connect, it would have been no problem. I think this is very effective. A lot of people write me back and say things like, oh, we have never met, but I saw your profile, I really liked it. And I thought you might be a good person to connect with or something like that. You don't really have to write much back, just something to let me know you're a human, because there are some fake profiles out there and I have gotten connection requests from things I've figured out are fake. You can also, and usually fake ones when everything's in lowercase or things are spelled badly, or you've seen that picture of that person somewhere else. That's actually the one that I noticed was I recognized the picture. It was like a stock picture kind of thing. And so that does happen. I've had some unusual replies where someone basically wrote back, and someone wrote back to me in French once. And I know a little French, but I asked my nephew who's fluent in French if my gut was correct. My guess was that he was hitting on me, but if you read it literally and you knew very little French, it was hard to tell. But my nephew confirmed for me, yes, he's totally hitting on you. So, I didn't write back to that one, but most people write back a reasonable explanation. Some people never write back. So that I kind of take it from there and see how they react to that. And if they write something back that's legitimate and makes them seem like a real person and who they really want to connect, then I hit accept and then we go from there. Someone's writing, let's see, one guy told me I had pretty eyes, right, exactly. There are some things, I've had some weird ones, but maybe only a handful or less. But this is like my kind of quality control to make sure that I'm bringing people in who are willing to actually develop a relationship, not just trying to count the numbers on of their connections. Emily wrote a question. If you see folk who have viewed your profile, do you ever reach back to them and say, hey, I see you looked at my profile, how can I help? I really don't do that. Well, for one, I don't have the paid account, so I can't really see who's seen me. But even if I could, I don't suggest that, because like a lot of job seekers say, oh, I saw a recruiter look at my profile, but they never made contact, and they get tempted to reach out to that person. And it's usually if they wanted to, they would have. So the recruiters have paid versions where they can write to you through InMail, and they can basically write to you without having to connect with you. And so I would say if they looked at your profile and didn't connect, I wouldn't go after them personally. That's my personal opinion. Everyone has different policies. So I'm just sharing some of the policies I've created. There was a part 2 to that. Something someone did to me. and I've thought about it, but could come across as rude versus waiting to see if they reach out versus a note. Yeah, I don't think it's rude. If someone looks at your profile and doesn't connect with you, I don't think it's rude for you to not do anything about it. Like, they looked at your profile for whatever reason. I mean, I look at people's profiles all the time because I'm looking for ideas or examples of things when I'm doing a workshop.
So I'll
So,
bust in. I'll bust in here, Paula. Like I
sure.
do it all the time for clients when I'm doing LinkedIn training. I'm like, oh, let's look for this. Boom, and I'm looking. Like people are like, why is this career counselor? So yeah, there are all sorts of reasons why people are in your profile, but that doesn't mean that they're looking for a connection.
Karen, you just cut out on me.
Sorry, could you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Can you guys type in the chat box if you can hear Karen right now? Because I actually, oh, you came back.
Am I here now?
Yeah, I couldn't hear that last part you said. Oh, someone said they can hear both of us.
Okay.
Never lost.
So
Okay, it was just me. So what were you, I'm just curious though, what were you
So the
saying?
point I made, and I suspect this is true of you and others, is that as a career counselor, I go in all the time with clients as I'm doing training, going, oh, let's look up this, let's check this. What if we do a search for this? I look at all sorts of profiles and they must wonder why the heck I am looking at them. So there are lots of reasons why people are there that aren't about they're seeking a connection. They're just looking for information on LinkedIn. And I encourage my clients to do that too, look at profiles to get a sense of what jobs are out there. So lots of
Very good.
reasons why somebody's in a profile.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, my mind just went to something else, but I was thinking of one more thing we could talk about. But I will move forward. How are we doing on time? Where are you? Okay. Now we're on to searching for jobs. So basically, I'll show you the search screen for the job, and it's pretty simple. It's mostly location or title, and that's basically the starting point. One cool thing is that LinkedIn will show you if you know someone who works at the company or if you went to college with them. And so that's very powerful to try to get contacted or basically to figure out who you know who works where you want to work. And then there is also advanced filters. There are advanced filters for job search too, and I'll show you that as well. Okay, I was just checking the chat real quick, but okay, yeah, looks like Emily also lost you for a minute. But we're back on track. So the screenshot here, jobs is circled. And one thing I noticed when I was doing this exercise that I had never noticed before is that the icon seems to turn white when you've selected it. If you notice when we had the My Network screenshot, then that symbol of the two silhouettes was also all white. So just a little tip that I noticed. So here, if you click on jobs, this is what you'll see. Now it has some suggested job searches. I'm not sure if these are because I put them in at one point. It's probably because I did a search on these words. I didn't do this when I went to get the screenshot. I did not put these in the other day, but yet they're there. And as you can see, you can save jobs. So when you look at one you like it, you can save it, then you can get back to it easily. You can see which ones you've applied for. Job alerts, you can set up alerts to say, notify me if a job comes up with these words in it. And LinkedIn salary is actually since 2016 feature where if you give LinkedIn your data, you have to give LinkedIn your salary information for it to give it back, to allow you to search salaries. And you have to do that every year. So if you do it today, you'll have access and you can run searches for a year, but then a year and a day from now, you'd have to give it your salary again to re-get that privilege. But it's free, and it's probably not as strong as salary.com or some others because I don't think everyone's willing to give their salary on LinkedIn, and the other ones are more anonymous. But they do promise that they won't share it with anyone and they won't show it. It's not going to be shown on your profile or anything like that. And then, of course, when you're searching, you can search by job title, skill, or company, and then, or you can look for the geography, or you could put both, and then you could say only show me jobs essentially that have career counselor in Baltimore. And so you click search, and Lois, hey Lois, says looks like the search terms match your current job. Right. I mean, I think again, I'm not sure if I did these or if just over time I did these searches over the past 10 years, but I'm pretty sure it either remembers them or it's smart enough because I have the word career counselor, career coach on my profile that it's already smart enough and suggesting it for me. And then if you click on the next slide, someone wrote, sorry, before I jump into this, Linda wrote, I noticed that some people look at your profiles as an anonymous person. So that was the sidetrack that I was going to get into a minute ago. Let me address that at the end. I don't have screenshots for that, so I can verbally explain it, but we don't have a screenshot for it. So this is the screenshot once you actually find, I put in some search terms and then these came up, and then if I click on Director of Career Coaching for New York University, you get this on the right. I noticed a few things when I did the search the other day that went away, which was kind of disappointing. What I was hoping to screenshot was, it used to be if you looked up one job, it would tell you other jobs that are similar or other companies that hire for similar jobs. And that was a great feature, because you might know New York University, but maybe you didn't know that another college also has a career center. It's probably a little bit better with a different industry, not career counseling in colleges, but like a federal contractor around here, like you go to SAIC and it says, did you also know that Northrop Grumman, or vice versa? So that was a great feature that I can't find anymore. I don't know if you've seen that go away as well, Karen, but I played around and I couldn't get it to pop up. So that was one thing that's not there. And the other thing that used to be there was, it used to show you the recruiter. Now there was an option, so the recruiter could choose to be seen or not seen. And I think probably a lot of recruiters choose to not be seen, but there were times where it would show you who is the recruiter listed for this job, and it would actually show you their profile and everything. You could click on it. I looked on a bunch of different job postings and I didn't see that. I don't know if it's just because of the ones I picked or if they changed that feature. But right now, I guess the most important thing on this page here is the connections, the thing that's circled in blue, because that tells me that I know 2 people who either work at NYU or used to work at NYU or have some connection to NYU. And I know 1 alumni. Now, I'm looking at the symbol, and I think that's the University of Baltimore. So it's saying, I know someone who went to University of Baltimore who works at NYU. And so then if I click on those, it would show me the 2 connections, and it would show me the 1 alum. And then of course I could take it a step further and see if there's, I would probably just reach out to those people by phone or their direct email that I have. I wouldn't necessarily do all of my communications through LinkedIn, because a lot of people aren't on it all the time. So it might take someone a month to write back to you. So I would just write directly or call directly if you have that information. And then if you look at the all filters that's circled in blue on the top right, this is what I meant by, if you're in a people search, it would say people on the far left instead of jobs. And then the all filters on the right is going to take you to the all filters for whatever category you're in. In this case, if you go to the next slide, you'll see when you click on all filters, you get things like this. And again, I've tried to not minimize, but try to fit as much on the slide as possible. So this part that's in blue, I was actually kind of shocked that you could sort jobs by the commute, whether it's remote. And I think though that will probably get a lot more popular in our current environment. You could search by title, which that makes sense. But benefits, I mean, that was kind of interesting to me. I guess when they post a job, they must have to put check off like medical insurance, vision. So the ones that I would have thought more of would be like location, job function, industry, and things like that. But these are all filters that, again, are free. There are more that you can use if you have the upgraded version, but I think that you can do everything you pretty much need to do with the free version. And I would say, because that's a common question people ask, if you are maxing out on all the things you can do with the free version, by all means upgrade. But most people aren't maxing out, and they're not really taking advantage of the free stuff. So I always say, why pay more if you're not even using the free stuff? Okay, that I think wraps up the slide and screenshots that I had. I do want to address the one thing that Emily brought up. So when you're looking at someone's profile, and this is in the privacy and settings section, where you can control the things that Karen showed you actually last week in the privacy and settings. This is a setting in that same section. And I can't remember the exact wording, but it's something like choose what people see when you look at them. And there's 3 choices. One is full disclosure. So if I look at your profile, it would say Paula Brandt, who works for Brand Career Management, looked at your profile. So that's full disclosure. Then there's like a middle ground, where it would say something like someone who works for brand career management looked at your profile. Well, I'm the only one working full-time at brand career management, so that would be pretty easy to figure out who I am, probably. And then the third one is just anonymous. It doesn't say anything, it just says anonymous looked at you. And I personally keep mine on anonymous all the time because I'm always looking at profiles. Like I said, and I don't want someone to think just because I looked at their profile that I want to connect with them, because there might be no other reason I looked at their profile except that I wanted to see what their background image looked like or something like that. So I keep mine anonymous all the time. Because I do that, I don't get to see who looked at mine. So that's a bit of a quid pro quo. If you keep it on anonymous, you won't get to see, it might show you 3 people or 2 people or something, but to see all of the people who looked at your profile, you will have to either upgrade or change to full disclosure. The middle one doesn't count in terms of the quid pro quo. So that's how that works. And hopefully that answered Emily's question.
Yeah, and there are a couple more in there.
Okay, let me look here. I want to just try to go in order.
Linda,
when you talk about the limitations on number of searches with the free version. Hey, Linda, thanks for joining us today. I don't have the numbers memorized. You know who actually does? I think Lynn Carroll knows those. But yeah, they did change it in the past year or so because I think a lot of people who maybe are in HR but don't have a $10,000 account to be a recruiter on the official paid version of LinkedIn. They just use it. They're just an average person using it as an HR person. And I think LinkedIn didn't like that. So they, or someone who's a salesperson, basically they noticed that a lot of people were running a lot of searches and they weren't getting money for it. So they did set a limit. I've never hit the limit, but I know Lynn has, and she's written a blog post about how to work around it by using Google searches and things like that as your primary, or at least initial search features or search engines. So I don't know the limit, but I think, I'm sure I read it at some point, maybe 30, 20, something like that. I mean, try it and see if you hit it and tell me what the limit is. Because I know at some point it's going to tell you, sorry, you've exhausted your searches for this month. And then you're going to have to wait, I guess, to the first of the next month. I'm not sure if they do it by the date you started LinkedIn or what. So sorry, Linda, that I don't have more exact answers, but it is true they are limiting if someone's seeming to do excessive searches and does not have a paid account. Okay, let me go back. Bethany said this is a little off topic, so we can save this until the end, but now we're at the end. You would like to target some organizations to the interest section of my profile, but I'm having trouble editing that section. So that's kind of a weird one. And I noticed, I actually watched the slides from your last week's version of CovidCareers, Karen. So I saw that you mentioned the interest section. I feel like they really have minimized that to the point where it's kind of useless. So it used to be like groups that you were a member of, you would see at the bottom. And that could be a great way to brand yourself if you were, obviously I would be a member of lots of groups that have to do with career counseling and career coaching. But now, after they redid the profile maybe a couple of years ago, for one, they just add things. So if you went, like I went to University of Baltimore, so that gets added to my interests. I didn't choose to do it. I don't think I have a way to say, to like make it go away. So some things, if you ever worked at a place or you ever, if you worked at a place or you've been in a group or you follow someone, those would all be ways for something to get into your interest section. And then places where you have worked and you have gone to school, it just automatically does it for you. So some people, like I follow Jeff Weiner because he, or Weiner, I can't remember, the guy who runs LinkedIn. Help me out. I think, anyway, I'm following him, and like Ariana Huffington and Richard Branson. I mean, there's some influencers basically deemed by LinkedIn, and if you follow them, it's going to show up in your interest section that you're following them. If you wanted to target certain companies and get them in your interest section, you would probably just go to their company page and hit follow. And then I think then it's going to show up. Same with a college. You could follow a college you never went to if you were trying to target them as an employer. But in reality, I don't think too many people are looking at the intersection. So I think the main thing would be, it only shows you like the top 3 or 6 for a person. So if they have like 200 things they're following, you're not going to see them all. I think the most important thing is to make sure that the things that are visible are appropriate for your brand, so that, you know, I wouldn't want, trying to think of something like, I don't know, I'm an ice cream lover. So It would actually be on brand to have, Ice Cream Lovers of America group on my intro section, but it's nothing professional about it. So I would probably try to make sure that wasn't the top 6 that are being shown on my profile at all times. I think as long as they're tied to your industry and appropriate, then that's the only thing I would make sure about the intersection. But it's a good point to follow companies that you want to target, period, because then they'll go into your news feed, and I would check those pages. I would check the company page. Some companies are really good about posting jobs on their company page, and that's actually a sneaky way for them to advertise jobs without having to actually pay for a posting, because they can just put it as an update. Hey, we're hiring for this. So I know Total Wine at one point was listing every job. That's a liquor store in the Baltimore, D.C. area, and there's more than one. Actually, they're regional, so they're national. Come to think of it, so they would post every job on their homepage, company homepage, as an update. Okay, can you hear me still?
Yes, we can hear you. And so
Okay.
the reason I included interests last time was for exactly that reason. It's where it's your target list. Like, you should be following target list companies, because LinkedIn will start sending you information about those companies. So that was
Okay.
why I
Yep.
encourage people to use it.
Yep. And that is a good reason for it.
Right. And so I don't see any more questions in the chat. And thank you, Michael, for stepping in and answering Bethany's question too. I think at this point we've sort of used our time. So I will just remind you all, before I thank Paula, next week we're going to be doing a resume checkup, just a quick run through of here's some things to do to get your resume buffed up and ready to go. I want to thank Paula tremendously for doing this. I always learn something about LinkedIn from you. And I learned a couple of really cool tricks today. I even learned one about Zoom. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise with all of us. And I'm seeing the chat boxes showing that as well. The link for this will be posted on the CovidCareers Facebook group. So do join us on CovidCareers on Facebook. It's CovidCareers 2020. It'll also be on my LinkedIn feed. So since you guys should be spending lots of time on LinkedIn updating and using all of Paula's tips, check out my profile and share the link with somebody who might be able to use it.
Yeah, and I just want to say thanks for having me. It's always fun. You can't get me to shut up about LinkedIn. So, and if anyone who's on the webinar today who I'm not connected to, please feel free to reach out to me. But as you can expect, I'm going to say, put a little note in there that just says I was on the CovidCareers call so that you don't get my generic reply.
All right.
And yeah, thanks everyone for being here today. It's really nice to have engaged and excited participants.
Yes, thank you all very much. And we'll see you next week, same time, 3:30, to talk about resumes. All right, I'm going to stop the recording there.